A man who we often describe as a master storyteller of our times. Though he calls himself, or chooses to call himself, prehistoric, a very warm welcome to Mr. Kiran Nagarkar.
Thank you, thank you.
The writer of books like Cuckold and Ravan and Eddie. Mr. Nagarkar, what I want to know from you first is the state of contemporary Indian writing as you see it right now. Does it encompass the reality of our times?
Let me try and take that in steps, okay? I remember in 1997 when Salman Rushdie published the anthology of Indian writing. He had made these very, let's say, adventurous, brave statements that the only worthwhile writing that was going on was in the English language. I don't want to go into Mr. Rushdie's almost total lack of knowledge of Indian languages. So I am not quite clear where he got this notion, because if you are not familiar with Indian literature, the regional language literature, then I think this is a very, very dubious statement to make. Look, let's not forget that 97, if not 98% of the writing in any country is, hey, mediocre at best. It can be even worse.
All through time, because this is important, I'm asking you about our current state, and you've seen a long patch of our literary times.
Look, because I'm extremely conscious of the weight and value of words, then writing a good book is an amazing thing. It's an amazing feat. But it is so commonplace now to talk about, the word great has become a Marathi word now. I don't know whether it's the same in the other languages in our country. But everything is even in English criticism, I'm talking about Westerners, and most of the critics will talk about, oh, a masterpiece, fantastic, super excellent, or whatever. What? You get is there a kind of plethora of Dostoevskys and Tolstoys and the great French writers and Shakespeare's? What are we talking about here? A great book is a very rare event. So I would like to think that, yes, Marathi also has had some damn good writing at times. And the other regional languages, especially Bengali, because I don't know the other languages. I'm sure Tamil and the literature of Kerala would have.
Sure. No, but why I ask you this, Mr. Nagarkar, is because, there are certain times when you read a few books, at that point in time, at that point in your own time, you may not appreciate it as much as you would when you revisit that same book in another time, in another state of maturity, perhaps. Have you experienced it?
Oh, yes. I think Graham Greene's, I have liked Graham Greene for a very long time. I have really thought that Anthony Burgess was really completely off the mark when he did a hatchet job on Greene and said that, all this God bothering gets on his nerves. If you look at the world today, that was 30 years ago.
Right.
What would Anthony Burgess make of the world today? Because it's only God bothering, right? Whether it's the Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, the Americans, what are they doing, the conservatives? So, yes, at a particular point in time, you might not appreciate something. But when Rushdie makes that kind of statement, that is a very, very problematic statement. And in 97, for instance, I think even English writers, as a matter of fact, were very young at that time. Whereas I get the feeling that today's writers, the young ones, some of them are doing terrific work.
Yes. Who has struck out as being someone who's been able to capture the moment, as it were? And perhaps we don't see it as such. We don't see it as people who accept this mandate to be able to chronicle our times, but to be able to ably reflect it in some sort of way. And you need others, you need critics, you need other writers perhaps to appreciate that, and other writers who've been doing it for many years.
No, I completely accept what you're saying. Also the fact that we in India had such a superlative tradition of criticism, because don't forget, when it comes to analysis, the Sanskrit language has been so rich in it, whether you're talking about the analysis of sex or whatever, the grammar of Panini, these are amazing the analytical books. So, and we have had tremendous writers like Kabir and the mystic writers in India have been just outstanding.
Right.
The majority of them, certainly.
But the culture of storytelling, it hasn't been, I mean, you are naming a couple of them, but if you look at the epics, etc., the contributions have come in from many different writers, isn't that right?
Indeed, absolutely, you're right. I'm not arguing
So
about
in that sense, it's a unique culture of storytelling in this country.
Yes, and oral storytelling, which is why when you think of Trotternama, that was an earlier book, or these new writers who are younger writers who, there's someone who, I've forgotten his name, but the Day Scholar, then there is someone who wrote, what was that called? The name will come back to me, and I'll hit on it again, okay?
Sure.
But these are guys who are trying out various things, and they're taking risks. And if you don't take risks, what have you got?
Right. But some of these risks that are being taken are more born out of commercial concerns. Do you think that that is the case that much more now than it was perhaps when you started writing, or perhaps when you even wrote a Cuckold, etc.? Did you have that at the back of your mind somewhere, that this book must sell, this book must make money? Any kind of money is welcome, okay, for me. But the point is, if you're going to make compromises or you're going to think of the market first, I will have to part company with you. But that's how these very young, fresh writers are doing it.
Absolutely.
And some of their work may not be dismissed as bad, even by you. But say a unique approach, say a risk taker, say an Amish Tripathi. He brings marketing skills to the table and is able to churn out something that is, I don't know if you'd agree, but I saw it as a unique, a fresh approach.
No, I'm not.
To mythology.
I can't argue the point that you're making at all, because, look, I respect the fact that they have gone their own route, okay? At the same time, it will certainly take some very fine critics to look at their work and decide whether this is of a literary order or not. It is quite likely, you see, I don't make the distinction between commercial and artistic writing at all. But so it is quite likely that their books are superb, have superb literary merit also. But I have not read most of these people. And as you yourself mentioned, they have tremendous marketing skills. In my time, perhaps this was not the uppermost. How much money would you make anyway in those days?
So when you said you would take a risk, and you must have taken a few risks yourself, where is that risk? In the approach to telling a story, in the way you've thought it through, in the way you've written it? Where is the risk taking in the kind of storytelling that you've done?
Well, I don't want to in any way praise myself, but Cuckold was a hell of a risk.
Right.
Don't forget, this is about perhaps the most famous woman that we've had in India.
Sure.
I mean, southern singers and movie makers have also gone and made movies on Mirabai. If you read Cuckold, you will find that first of all, she's not the focus. It is her husband, the Maharaja Kumar. At no point is her name mentioned. And again, the interpretation of her personality is so different from whatever we have seen in other people's copying of her verse under her name, or I don't want to take names. They have done what they wanted to do. So, but I think the complexity of the person, the rigor and the sheer robustness, when we talk about Meera, did we really grasp that here was perhaps one of the earliest feminists? And what a woman. God help her, whoever the person was who was married to her. She must have been, just as it must have been impossible to be Gandhiji's wife, and God knows I really respect Gandhiji. But these are difficult people. But you can't forget that Mirabai is something else. She comes from a royal family. Imagine her dancing in public and singing. I don't know whether we really understand the kind of obdurate nature that she had. And she stuck to her guns.
Right.
I'm not crazy about her verse, just as I would be crazy about Kabir or Tukaram or Basavanna,
right,
or Lalla from Kashmir.
Right.
But she is some woman.
Right.
So, I was not this is something that I would like to emphasize. In my writing, I have never been conscious of taking risks.
Right.
It's the thing that I had to do, wherever the plot was taking me, plot and the character were taking me.
So the plot takes you?
No. Today I emphasize this. I do not see the two as mutually exclusive.
The plot and the character?
Yeah.
And your choice of what draws you?
Yes, because if we think of them as separate and completely contraindicated, then we are making a blunder. You cannot develop character unless you take plot, it's the plot which takes you. And character is the one that decides where will the character go, what kind of twists and turns will the plot take.
Right.
If it is a passive character, you can't make him into an active, get a very active plot.
Right.
What you would have to have is someone who's pensive, who's contemplative. But in Cuckold, you have a Maharaj Kumar or heir apparent who is actually a follower of the Gita, not the Gita that the Gurus are teaching us, but as Krishna taught it. It's his dharma to be a warrior.
Right.
It is his dharma not to waste the life of his soldiers, which is what the Rajputs were doing all the time. So I completely, without aiming to do so, my Maharaj Kumar is a very different Rajput. At some point in time, I think Rana Pratap also, because he was fighting none other than Akbar, he went in for guerrilla warfare. My guy is doing guerrilla warfare all the time. And there are times when he will confront the enemy straight on.
Right.
But he's not above telling lies, anything to save his soldiers.
Mr. Nagarkar, this kind of characterization, this kind of building of a character as you move plots along, is something that occurs to you on hindsight, or is it there when you're writing? Because when you're writing, you're driven by the moment.
No, this is an extremely good question, and I would say it's half and half, I think. Or maybe, the point is, as Green himself, Green points out in End of the Affair, there are decisions that are taken unconsciously or subconsciously, in your sleep or whatever. But they come ready-made. I remember when I started writing Cuckold, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to write.
Right.
Excepting the fact that at some point in time, the Maharaj Kumar would paint himself blue because it is Krishna who.
Right.
So some decisions you take very carefully, but they were taken so quickly. At no point did I have to decide about an archaic language. I was not going to use archaic language.
Sure.
I was going to use contemporary language, but no slang at all.
Right.
Because those guys were not speaking in an archaic language. They were talking in a language that was absolutely contemporary for them.
Which brings me to my next question, that after all these years of writing, of being asked questions, of you analyzing your own style, looking back at what you've done, does that dictate the way you write now?
I'm sure that also affects the writing. I'm not denying that at all. But I think the primary concern for me has always been the subject. If you read the extras, by that time my heroes, Ravan and Eddie, are grown up and they're in Bollywood.
Yes.
They're extras, okay? But this is Bollywood. So Bollywood is excess, everything in excess. So their language also is excess.
Right.
I'm not using a tight, austere language, which I would do in Saat Sakkam Trechalis, my Marathi book,
Sure.
or I would do in Cuckold.
Right.
So it is a subject for me, because something succeeded the last time.
Doesn't mean it has to be replicated.
God, it's a disaster, I think, most of the time.
What next can we expect from Mr. Nagarkar now?
Well, pray for me. That's all that I can say, because until a book is published, there is nothing there. Don't ever trust yourself.
Well, we trust all the work that you have done in the past, and we have great expectations of you, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
very
very
good
much.
luck for the future.
Thank you. Thank you.